everybody. Welcome to this session on GeeCipster. So I am Julien Dubois. I am the creator and lead developer of GeeCipster. I also work at Microsoft as a cloud developer advocate. Let me give you my bio. Whoops. Oh yes, and you can follow me on Twitter. It's at Julien Dubois. I love to have Twitter messages, and I will happily answer you. There's also a Twitter handle for GeeCipster. We'll see that just afterwards. So today we are going to have a short intro on what GeeCipster is. I will do, like most of the time, live coding, and we will do a live demo of GeeCipster. And if we have enough time, I will deploy it to the cloud. And as I work for Microsoft, we will deploy it to the new Azure Spring Cloud that was released last week. So it will be like a world premiere, as nobody has ever done it before, especially live on stage. So, yes, I'm taking risk. It's going to be fun. So what is GeeCipster all about? So GeeCipster is an open source project. It is widely used. So this is a website, by the way. So you can check the same thing on GeeCipster.tech. So we've had last month more than 100,000 downloads. It's what we usually have now. So it's like more than 1 million installations per year. It's growing, as you can see. We've got nearly 15,000 stars on GitHub, which is very big for an open source project. It's one of the biggest ones in Java. We need a few more stars to reach the 15,000, so if you have time, please click on star. We've got more than 500 contributors, so this number is not live updated because it's paginated on GitHub, so it's too long now because we have too many people. So I'm just going to click to have the right number. It's 528 on the main project. We've got, I don't know how many side projects now. We've got tens of side projects. So in total, we might have, I don't know, 800 or 900 contributors on the general GeeCipster organization. So it's quite popular. It's also being used on GitHub by more than 27,000 projects. So that's open source projects using it. Of course, GitHub doesn't count the private ones you have in your company. By the way, GeeCipster is mostly used by companies. So we've got tons of sponsors and backers. So those are companies giving us money for the project. Our current budget is about 40,000 euros per year. We use that money mostly to pay for contributors. You know, when there are bugs, when there are tickets, we pay money for that. So if you want either to contribute or if you want to make money, well, you're welcome. It's part of the deal. We've also got companies who are sponsoring GeeCipster by giving manpower. For example, Ipon is providing trainees every year. I don't know how many trainees this year. I think it's four people. So those companies are also helping the project in other ways. And we've got quite a number. Where is it? Hang on, I'm lost in my own website, which is not normal. I'm just going to go there. We've got officially more than 300 companies using it. So big names and also smaller companies who are using the project for their business. And well, it's part of why the project is successful is that we have so many people using it. Well, out of those people, we've got many people contributing back. And that's why we've got so many sponsors and contributors and why the project does so much. So that's really thanks to all of those people if the project works. So let's have a look at what GeeCipster does. Oh yes, so the image has changed. So we have we have several different images. So depending on when you arrive, you will have another person arriving. And when we generate the project, also the image is random. So we have all inclusive and diverse, which is really good. If you like this, and if you want to do more images, it's open source. You can also contribute to have more images. It's hard for us to have artwork. We are coders, we are not designers. So we are bad at doing images. I paid for those, by the way, because we couldn't find anybody to do this. So GeeCipster is a code generator. It generates, so initially, it generates a Java backend with Spring Boot and an Angular frontend. It has evolved a lot during the last years. So instead of having just Angular, now we also support React and Vue for the front end. And for the back end, we now have some very good experimental features with Node.js, .NET, and also some non-Spring Boot framework in Java like Micronaut. So we are going to have, in the future, even more backend options. So the initial thing is Angular and Spring Boot, but it's evolving a lot to have more options. We're going to do a quick demo of a normal application, and that will allow me to explain all this better. So we've got this online website to generate applications. You can do everything on the command line. In fact, JHipster is a command line, but the website is here to help, and as I want to do things quicker, I'm going to use it now. It's just a wrapper around the command line, by the way. So I'm going to create a company on my GitHub account. I will call it test. So I remember that it's just a test. JHipster has got a huge support of microservices. It's more complex than monoliths, and as time is short, I'm just going to do a monolith. But if you want to do full microservices architecture, we can also do that with JHipster. Instead of generating one app, we just generate several apps. It's kind of the same thing, in fact. So I've got tons of options. I'm just going to select a few interesting ones. For security, we support JWT tokens. We support OAuth2 with things like Okta or Keycloak. And we support like old school HTTP sessions. Nobody uses those anymore, but still available. We support a lot of databases, either SQL databases or NoSQL databases. I will stick with SQL to have something, let's say, usual. MongoDB is quite popular also with JHipster users. Cassandra and Couchbase are more specific, mostly for people doing microservices, I guess. When I'm selecting SQL databases, I've got more options on the type of SQL database. I'm going to use PostgreSQL because it's the one I like, but you've got tons of options. This one we need to change. You know that Oracle now has given the driver to the, well, as open source on, I'm not sure it's open source. It's on Maven Central, it's available on Maven Central, not sure it's open source. So now we need to change that. And so I will select PostgreSQL. As I've got SQL database, I can use a cache. Oh, sorry, that's Spring Cache, and I can use an Hibernate cache also. So we've got tons of support on caching. I will stick with the default one. I kind of like Hazelcast because it's distributed. Sometimes when I don't want to have any issues, I don't take any caches. It's easier. We've got tons of other options. I will go very quickly through them because otherwise it's just going to take too long for us and we will not finish today. Oh yes, important thing, client-side options. Officially, we've got Angular and React. Vue is already there. We have not put it officially, but it's already working as well as the other two. They are basically all the same from a JHipster perspective, then it's a matter of test. Which one do you prefer? Do you prefer, I don't know, Vue.js because it's smaller and faster? Do you prefer Angular because most enterprises use Angular? Do you prefer React? I don't know, it's really up to you. We've got a strong support of internationalization. I'm going to remove it because it had more stuff when we generate, and I want to go quicker. And one fun thing I will up to demo. By default, so we have also strong support on testing. So you are forced to have JUnit and Karma for the JUnit for the backend and Karma for the front end. Well, you are forced. If you don't like what we generate, you can delete them. I mean, but we don't force you really. But those are generated by default. But if those are not enough for you, you can use stuff like Getlink for performance testing or Protractor, for clicking everywhere. On the website. I like this one because for a demo it's really fun, so I'm selecting this one. And then I can either download everything as a zip file or generate it on GitHub, which is even easier for me. I'm taking the easiest options because we only have 1 hour, but of course you've got tons of other options. So this is generating the app for me on GitHub. It's already pushing it. And should be done, it's done. So I can go here, and my app is all ready for me if the network is okay. Oh, we've got a non-important security alert. You can forget about it. It's only for development. we should upgrade it, but it's only for people doing development. I'm going to clone it and open it in my IDE. So it works with all IDE. We generate more than just Java and TypeScript files. We generate configuration files for, I don't know, for Git, for tons of things. So your IDE is going to be automatically configured without doing anything. I'm just copy pasting it. And of course, it works also with Visual Studio Code or Eclipse. I know people using NetBeans say it works, but I'm not using NetBeans, so this one I cannot personally tell if it works, but I've heard it's working well. So I'm just opening it. We're going to have a quick look at what is generated. I'm just going to run it, because it's the best way to understand what we are doing. So here I've got my project called test. At the moment, it's mostly a skeleton. I have just generated an app with a few options. We see that it's quite a lot of files because I'm displaying the the hidden files here. So you see that we are generating quite a lot of configuration files to help the IDE or to help you. It has been automatically recognized by my IDE. You see already it's saying, oh, it's a Spring Boot app. Do you want me to run it? Yes, please run it. And if we have a look here, so I'm first having a look at the Java code. We're having like a normal Spring Boot app. If I click here, you recognize like add Spring Boot application. We've got a few configurations that is available, mostly for security, like JWT, as I selected JWT, or for performance issues, optimizations. So my app is up and running. If I click here, we can have, it's going to fail. I can already tell you because I didn't start the front end yet. But my app is already here. Trust me, it's going to work. That was my backend. Now let's have a look at the front end. So in my web app folder, I've got a full Angular application that is connected to my backend. If you don't like to have everything in the same monolith, we can generate them in different projects. There are tons of options. I'm only doing everything in the same project because it's easier for today. I would recommend that for normal people, but you've got options if you don't like this. Where is my package? It's here. So same thing, my IDE has recognized it's a null application. I'm going to install the node packages for that, and then I'm going to run it. Then my front end will appear. While it's installing, because I guess the network is not very fast here, one thing we didn't talk about, database. Where is my data? Well, what JHipster generated for us also is a full database configuration using Liquibase. So Liquibase is a tool to version your database, and we are generating your Liquibase files for you. So here you're going to have a full database working without doing anything because it's generated for you. So people tend to forget about that with JHipster because it just works out of the box. But if you don't have JHipster, well, you've got tons of stuff to do. And here, there's like, you will see there's like nothing. It should be ready. Yes. Let me show the NPM scripts. So we've providing quite a lot of scripts like to test, to build, and so on. I'm just going to start my app. Oh, still taking some time. So just a little note while it's downloading. As you can see, we've got start normal and start TLS. We also generate SSL certificates for you. So you can test with SSL if you want to. I will not use it by default because SSL is just going to cause us more issues, but it's quite useful for development. So let's start this. So this is going to package my Angular front-end application, and I'm going to be able to use it, but also to have hot deployment of the front-end with it. By the way, well, you will quickly see that in my demo. As you know, with Spring Boot, you've got hot deployment of your Java code files. With Angular and Webpack here, we've got hot deployment of the front end. So basically, we've got hot deployment of everything. So you will see in my demo that I don't redeploy stuff. I just save, and it's just deploying automatically. So here is my front end. I can sign in. So it's admin by default. And I can have a look at my app. So at the moment, it's mostly user management. because I have just a skeleton app. I don't know, I can change my password. I can have a look. And so this front end is generated for you. It's, of course, fully responsive. And if you open it in another window, there's a neat thing that we do for you. If it's, we're using something called browser sync. So if I go, for example, to this, oh, it's not working. Hang on. It should be working. It's connected to browser sync. Well, it should automatically update both pages, but it doesn't. So my demo fails. I don't know why. It says it's connected on both. Maybe it's because I've got a different profile. I don't know. Anyway, not a big deal. So by default, it's an empty app with mostly security and performance stuff. And we've got here a little menu called Entities, where we have nothing. This is where we'll do most of our business stuff. The interesting thing with GeeCipster is that we've got what we call the GeeCipster domain language. So it's our own domain language for generating applications. If you have a look at a sample file, so you can do it on the command line. We've got some IDE plugins for that. I would even recommend the IDE plugins if you do it yourself, because it's more enjoyable to have everything on the IDE. But we've got also this nice web interface to do it. So well, lots of choices. So this is one of our sample apps. Well, you can recognize this type of graph probably. And here's our domain language. So it's like here we've got a category, and I can add, I don't know, usually I put something relevant to where we are, so I put GeeCON string. And as you can see, it adds GeeCON here in my category stuff. Let me save this. So this is all graphical, and I can put, I would say, the usual parameter in all my entities. I can also link them, do relationships. And I've got tons of other options, like doing paginations and that kind of thing on my entities. So this is going to generate my entities. What I mean by that is going to generate the front end with Angular. It's going to generate the back end with Spring Boot, like repositories and Spring MVC REST endpoints. And it's also going to generate the database stuff, just going to generate everything. So let me go back to my GeeCipster Online. Here, I'm going to select, so this is the one I was working on. I'm going to apply it on my project. So it was Dubois test. Yeah, I've got tons of projects. Let's apply this. So this is going to generate all the entities for me, and it's going to send me a pull request for that. Once again, you can script everything. For myself, I usually do everything on the command line, but here it's easier. I'm not taking any risk on the demo. So here's my pull request. Let's have a look. So it generated, as you can see, we're also working with Dependabot. So I'm having, that was my security vulnerability. So Dependabot allows me to solve it. But it's not as easy as what they say. It's not just upgrading a version. So this is my pull request for my entities. You can see that the GeeCipster came, did a few commits. I did quite a lot of files. I'm trusting what he did, so I'm merging it. And let's take it here. So I'm coming back to my IDE. I'm going to tell Git to pull it. Here it is. And so all of the files are arriving automatically. And you remember when I said that everything did add auth reload. So as soon as the network is okay, we'll get the files. Everything will auth reload, and we'll have everything working. You can see that here the front end is already working. And for the back end, I'm just going to save everything. And Spring Boot will just auth reload, and it will work. So let me go back to my app. Where did I put it? Yeah. So this was my app. Well, I'm coming here. Oh, I've got entities now. Auth reload is working. And let's have a look at the category. Remember, I added GeeCON. Yeah, GeeCON is here. You can imagine that this comes from a database. So JHipster generated the liquid-based files for the database, including a GeeCON column. It added some sample data, so this is just fake data. It's done with something called faker.js, so just generate random stuff. That's good for development, because when I arrive, I've got everything working, even with sample data. I've got my data, my database, my Java code, my Angular code, so I have everything for working. And I've even got my, as I said before, my protractor test, so I can test everything very easily. I just right-click here. And the test for, the GUnit test was generated, the karma test was generated, and here the protractor test were also generated. I'm just doing protractor because it's more enjoyable, but trust me, all the tests are here. So that's really fun to use. Might be a bit long because we've got quite a lot of entities, but you get the idea. Let's have a look. I'm not sure I can kill it easily because when it starts clicking, probably not very happy that I killed it, but well, trust me, it will work. Let's just have a look at what was generated before we go further. So here are all my Liquibase files. I'm going from the database to the front end. So for example, in category here, I've got a Liquibase change set with my GeeCON column. And I've got some data here. Oh, sorry, so the fake data is available as a CSV file. So you can, it was category. So you can open it with Excel. I work for Microsoft, so I use Excel for CSV, of course. And those only work in development mode. Oh yeah, something I didn't tell about. Here you've got a little dev banner. It shows that I'm in development mode. So here I'm not using PostgreSQL, I'm using an embedded database, which is H2. I'm using some fake data. I've got here a little banner to tell me that. And also, here I've got everything with auto reload. So it's really good for development, but for production, it's not really good. You know, it's having lots of little files that update all the time. It's awesome for when I'm developing, but it's not so good for production. We will see production just afterwards. It's just having a really nice and I would say as good as possible development environment. So when I'm a developer, I can edit stuff here. So this is the fake data. I can put some more meaningful data for myself. I can then have a look at my Java code. So let's have a look at the category resource Spring endpoint. So it's a normal Spring Boot endpoint. We can have a look at, I don't know, at the, usually I like to have a look at the get mapping. This is how you get all the categories. And so you can see that it's going to ask a service. It's going to use pagination, and it's going to return that everything is OK with the content. I would say pretty classical Spring Boot code. And if we just have a look at the repository, it's a classical Spring Boot repository which generates a few requests for you because as this one is connected to some other entities, we know that you might like to do some eager relationships. So we are using Hibernate extensively. By default, everything is lazy. But we know that sometimes you want to do an eager query, so we generated the queries for you, so it's easier for you. If you don't like them, you can, of course, always delete them. But we know that eager relationships are usually useful. That's why we generate them by default. By the way, something I didn't show. Here in my admin menu, we've got two little menus here which are interested as a developer. The first one is API. So here I've got a full Swagger documentation which was generated for my app. So Swagger is the thing that had the security vulnerability, but it's only for development, of course. So let's have a look at the category. I can do a get all here, and this is going to. So I can do the request here. It can give me the curl request with the correct JWT token to do the request. So I can, if I'm a front-end developer, I can just work with that because I've got everything documented for me. I've got everything already. I just need to copy paste, and I can work as an Angular developer. I don't need to know Spring Boot to use the Spring Boot app. So let's have a look now as an Angular developer at what this looks like. So on the web app, let's have a look at the entities, going back to the category. Here I've got, I would say, very classical Angular app with some HTML for displaying my application and some TypeScript modules. I've got a router, I've got a service, and I've got some dialogues. You know that. Just let me show you what they are. If I go to category here, I can edit here, and this is one of the dialogues. So all those forms are generated for me, and if I don't like them, of course, I can just edit them and change them, and it's going to be automatically updated, and it will just work out of the box. So that's all really nice. I've got a full development environment from the database to the front end, which have been generated for me. I've got tests for everything. I can, of course, regenerate stuff if I want to add more things. We've got lots of workflows and process for that to update an existing app, which is not easy when you are doing code generation. But then there's one more step. I want, at some point, to go to production. Production is the place where your app should end up, so that's very important for you. And we've got tons of options for that. The first thing we do is that we've got a very strong support for Docker. So I'm just closing those to make some room. You might have seen that we had here a little zip directory, and also we've got a Docker directory here. When I generated my app, it also generated everything to work with Docker. You can use this in two ways. The first thing is just use it on your machine. For example, it generated for me a PostgreSQL configuration. Remember, I selected PostgreSQL for production, so I've got a PostgreSQL.yaml file. If I had selected MySQL, I would have a MySQL.yaml file. If I had selected MongoDB, I would have a MongoDB.yaml file. All this is pretty classical. So I can use that to work on my machine like in production. Just do Docker compose up, and everything will be running. Yes, here is my whole application. So my current application is just my Java app and a PostgreSQL file. If you are doing microservices, we generate stuff which are much more complex with Docker Compose. We can, of course, generate a full architecture. So you would have like, I don't know, you've got like 3 services. Each of them has got one database. You've got Kafka. You've got like tons of stuff. And here we can generate like a huge file with everything for you. So on your machine, you can test everything, which is awesome. And you might think that it's going to be good for production, but we all know that this is a lie. In production, this is not really going to work like that. Typically, your database in production will probably not be a Docker image like that. You want to have backups, maintenance, SLA, that kind of thing. And even our JHipster application, you want to have, well, you're going to have scalability. You want to probably put it into Docker, into Kubernetes. You want probably more than that. You want service discovery. So for that, you will want something like Eureka or Istio. You want much more than what is available here. It's good for having something which is close to production on your machine. It might be good for production, but it's probably not going to be enough for production. So if you want to go to production, we are offering you a ton of possibilities. Let me just go back to the website. If we go here to production, as you can see, we propose deployment options for Kubernetes, OpenShift, Heroku, Cloud Foundry, Amazon. We've got even 2 for Amazon. Azure, Google Cloud Platform, Boxfuse, and of course you can easily do your own. We have tons of available documentation for that. As I currently work for Azure, I wanted to deploy everything to Azure, but you will see that it's, from what I'm doing here, there is nothing very specific to Azure on what I'm going to do. So let me just add one more thing. You remember I said here we've got a dev banner, and it's not very efficient. If we have a look here, if we do a Chrome audit, this of course is not going to be very good. We've got, performance. That's the one I'm looking for, audit, yes. I'm going to run an audit just to show you this one. So everything is auto-loaded. We've got tons of little files, which is awesome for development, but for production, it's not that good. So I will have a very bad mark for production, and that's normal. Oh, performance is really poor. It's normal, it's my development version. Let's have a look at what we have in production, and we will test if, we improved in production. So I'm going to deploy everything into Azure. So in Azure, we've got tons of different options to deploy an app. You've got something called Azure Web Apps, where you can just deploy your monolith very easily. You can also just use a VM and deploy on a VM. So it's not, there's nothing, I would say, mandatory on Azure. I'm just going to use Azure Spring Cloud because we released it last week with Pivotal. So it's a fully managed Spring cloud backed by both Pivotal, so people doing Spring, and Microsoft. So basically, you've got support from both companies on the architecture and infrastructure from Azure, and for Pivotal on the software. Of course, it's a cloud, so it only works if we've got networks, or network access. Well, we'll pray that network arrives, and I will just go to my app. Oh, it's working. Hang on. So my app is here. So that's the app I just generated. This is working with the current production version of JHipster. I want to go to the development version because what I'm going to show you is not available yet. Network is not with us today. Come on. Really? Yes, it's coming. So let me just show you how you use the development version of JHipster. So this is, I just checked out JHipster here, and I switched to a branch called Azure Spring Cloud. It is my development branch. I'm just going to tell NPM this is the one I want to use. I don't want to use the production version. I want to use the development version. And now I'm going to install it into my app. Oh, if I type correctly. So here I'm telling it I want to use the development version in my app. And now in my app, I've got a new command line, Azure Spring Cloud. So I can just use JHipster Azure Spring Cloud, and it will add the correct configuration files so I can deploy my app to production, to Azure Spring Cloud. I'm just going to run it and show you what's here. So this is the new Azure Spring Cloud panel. We've got tons of options. What is interesting for us is that here we've got a configuration server. Oh yes, I am cheating a little bit today because I already set it up here, my configuration server. And I did it for one good reason. So, come on. Here I have, and I'm not going to click there. I am configuring my database here. So I've got a production database. I've got a PostgreSQL, which is already running, and it is configured here. And as I don't want to show my database password because it's not a good practice, it is hidden here. So by the way, if I go back to JHipster here, if I go to config, so we've got here some Spring Boot configuration files, so the usual YAML files. So this is the main one, of course. And I've got one for development and one for production. So just to show you that I'm totally confident it will be working, I'm deleting my data source. So here in production, I've got no data source configured anymore. It's going to be configured by here my configuration server. So if I've got a database working at the end, it means that everything worked. Second interesting screen we have here is we've got an apps screen. So it's a screen where all my Spring Boot applications are deployed. I've got nothing at the moment. That's, of course, that's what I'm going to do. So it's going to ask me a few questions, like my resource group name. So it's taking the default from my Azure configuration, so I don't have anything to do. And I'm going to have a meaningful name, like GeeCON. And I've got two options. This is something we do quite often on JHipster. It's either you build and deploy locally, or you can build on a CI/CD environment. I only did GitHub Actions for the moment, but that's, well, of course, that will evolve. That's probably the way we prefer on JHipster. Instead of here typing and telling, oh, please deploy everything, we're just configuring the CI/CD, and everything will be done in the CI/CD. So next time, you will just do git push, and you don't type anything anymore. You just git push. The CI/CD will build for you and deploy for you. So you don't have anything to do, which is even better than typing. Yes, the whole goal of JHipster is that you don't type anything. Well, you do as less as possible. And of course, we try to automate everything and hide JHipster for you. I mean, we generate for you and we go away. So it has generated my app. Let's just have a look here. Refresh. So I've got my app GeeCON, which is running. It's empty for the moment. And it asked me to override a few files. Just let me show you what it did. So it created a few Azure config files. I'm not sure. Honestly, I'm still working on them. I will probably limit them a little bit. And oh, by the way, this is my JWT secret. Do you think it's a good idea to put it here? No. So I'm generating it here, so I'm sure that you've got it running, even if you don't do anything. But I've also got it in my hidden configuration files here. So I've got another secret, in fact. So you can copy-paste the other secret. It doesn't work. It's not the one I will use in production. That's why your configuration server is really useful. And then, well, basically that's all it did. It added for me a new profile, which is here. Typically to have the config server running, to have a registry server running, to have distributed tracing running. So just adding stuff to help me in production. And this is stuff that I will not use in development. But that's basically all it does. So you might hear on the first row that my computer is like working a lot. What it's doing is, so it's doing a full production build, so it's finished now. When we do a production build in JHipster, we build, of course, the backend with Java, but we also do the front end with Angular, and that's quite a big thing. So that's why the computer is working really hard to generate a minified and optimized front end. It made everything into an executable jar file, and now it's going to deploy it to the cloud. Once the application is deployed, so it depends on the network, of course, it will, of course, appear here as running. And, well, we just need to click on it, and we'll be able to access it. And then we will see if my production deployment is better than my development one. A couple of things. The issue usually with microservices, you don't want to expose them to the internet because, well, it's not the point of microservices. And for monoliths, like the one I've created, maybe you don't want to deploy them straight away to the internet. So what Azure Sprinkler does is you've got a test endpoint here with a token. So you can play with them without exposing them to the internet. And of course, when you're ready, you can give it a domain. So it will be exposed on the internet. So I'm already exposing it because I'm confident on what I'm doing. We might wait a little bit because I don't know how long the network is going to take. Do you have any questions right now? Does anybody? No?
There are 2 questions
on Slido. Oh, it's a question Slido. Oh, sorry, I don't know about Slido. Can anybody tell me the questions? I'm sorry about it. Oh, thanks a lot. Okay. Slido. Yeah, this is not going to help my deployment. I hope it's not a big app. Okay. So we made the whole network crash while doing the deployment. Thank you. Oh, by the way, that's why I prefer to do my deployment with the CI/CD system. Because if I was just using GitHub Actions to do my deployment, I would just do git push. So it's just a few bytes going to the network. Everything is done in the cloud, and I have nothing to do. So it's usually much faster. So thank you. So we have 2. Yes. So I will read them here. It's easier. So we've got 2 questions. The first one: any plans to support Kotlin in the future? We have got something called JHipster. So it's someone who ported JHipster to Kotlin. I forgot this one when I said we have .NET, we've got Node.js, we've also got Kotlin. I think it's nearly fully complete. So yes, well, we support Kotlin, basically. Yeah, something we didn't tell about. Well, if you go to the main website here, so this is the main application, the main generator, and then we've got options. If you go down here, we've got the most popular ones here. And you can do either what we call modules or blueprints. So to make it simple, it's ways to extend JHipster. So you can do your own, for example, JHipster Kotlin thing. It extends JHipster, so we've got our API, you've got everything from JHipster, but you can override some files. So they are just overriding the Java files to generate them in Kotlin instead. It's quite easy to do. It's quite popular, and that's how we've got Kotlin and Vue.js support at the moment. As you can see, those are ordered by number of downloads. So the Kotlin and Vue.js today are really, really popular. And that's why at some point, also, that's also the way we work. For example, when Vue.js arrived, we said, oh, maybe it's a bit complicated to do. Please do it in a sub-generator, sorry, in a blueprint. So they're doing it outside of the main project, so they can work very, very fast. They don't depend on us. And if it's popular, and it is, and if we like it, and we do, at some point we'll merge it into the main project so everybody can use it easily. So today you have to install it separately. So it's a bit less work for end users. And if everybody loves it, we will just merge it into the main project, and so everybody will have it with the main generator, so it will be easier. So basically, it's a choice. And then the second question, if I decide to change an existing entity, should I do it manually? So that's, I would say, a very common question for generators, and that's a very good question. I got it all the time. So basically, you got, I would say, two schools. Some people believe, and I might be in those people, that once it's generated, it's your own code. So for example, if I take my Angular code here, I'm taking the category. I'm going to modify this quite a lot because I've got some business stuff. I mean, my company is doing something more complex than just a CRUD. Otherwise, they would not need me. So I'm going to change everything. So at some point, there's like no way to regenerate that. Because it's my own code, it has become business code. This is probably obvious for Angular code. For Java code, there might be more discussions. For example, if I go to my entity, so that's an Hibernate entity, probably not something that changes too much. This thing, I would be quite happy to keep it. So there's another school which says, oh, I would like to keep my existing code and regenerate it without modifying stuff. So here there are two options. So some people do, well, with Java, for example, they work with inheritance. So they modify inherited classes, and they don't touch the JHipster classes. Or some people, like myself also, we use Git a lot. I usually, especially for those files, I mean, those files, they probably don't change a lot. I mean, what JHipster generated is probably as good as it can get. So what I'm going to do here, if I want to change something, is that I'll just change it and say description like this. I'm going to commit it, and then when I will do a generate, I will have, so we've got a little utility for that. I will try to merge it, you know. And what our utility does is that it creates a new branch with a new version, and it's going to try to merge the differences between my code, the original code, and the new generated code. So if I change something here that is not being changed by the new JHipster code, my code is going to win. If I didn't change anything, but there's a new version coming from JHipster, well, JHipster will win, and I will have a merge conflict if I change the same code as JHipster, which can, of course, happen. But then maybe there's a bug. It's a bit strange, so then I need to have a look at it. What I like about it is that it's all working with Git, so it works with everything. It's the thing I don't like with inheritance, because inheritance looks cool for Java, but first of all, it doesn't work with all Java files. For your Spring Boot controllers, it's not going to work. You can do inheritance on a Spring Boot controller. I mean, then it's an inherited controller that will work. And also, it doesn't work, for example, on YAML files. You don't have inheritance on that. So it doesn't work for everything, while Git works everywhere. So I'd rather use Git for that. So there's a lot of tricks and a lot of available workflows to allow you to work with JHipster apps in the long run and keep generation working. But then it's really it's a way of thinking, because some other people, and that was my original idea, they consider that this is their code, and so they take control of it, and they don't want to regenerate anything. Oh, sorry, there are also some people thinking there's a mix. Maybe you can also consider that this code, the entities, the category, this is business code. Something that I take control, and I don't want JHipster to generate anything anymore. It's my code. But let's have a look at a configuration file. I will take this one. So this is for Jackson, this is for JSON. We've got a few tricks here with JHipster to, for example, we got this module, which adds like 10% performance on top of what you've got by default on Spring Boot. So this is really good. As a developer, I don't know about that. I don't want to know about that. So I would like to have JHipster keep working on it. I don't want to take control on that. I would like JHipster to keep generating that. And by the way, this will change probably in the future because this doesn't really work well with the JDK 11, and we've got a new module for that for JDK 11, which is arriving. So we've got a very complex work here, which is really good for performance, which is clearly not easy. And as a developer, you probably don't want to delve too much into those things. So maybe it's also a good idea to say some configuration files are handled by JHipsters, and some are handled by me, and then there's a choice. And I work with Git to select what I want. We've got only 3 minutes left. Oh, build success. Build succeeded, so we're happy. That's a perfect demo. Well, if it works. So here is my app. Hopefully. Yes, I'm in production. Come on, awesome. The first time in the world I saw a deployment on Azure Spring Cloud. We should be using PostgreSQL. We've got a few screens for that on JHipster, so just have a look. Yes, it's PostgreSQL, so it's working. And also, you remember we wanted to have a look at the audit. We had very bad performance in development mode. In production mode, how is it? It should be better. All right. It's much better. And best practice is 100, accessibility is really good. SEO is really good. So we have a lot of work on the JHipster team for that. Of course, this may vary between React and Vue.js. I think the Vue.js numbers are really, really impressive. They are even better. And that's it. So if you want to go to this URL, you can log in, it's admin, and play with the entities. And oh yes, so you remember the fake data was only in development. We are in production. We have no fake data anymore. So I can create a new GeeCON stuff. And this is my production live. And so we've got 1 minute left. So I'm quite happy that in 50 minutes, I could show you how to generate an app, add entities, modify a little bit some stuff, and then deploy to production on Azure Spring Cloud, and everything working out of the box. And that's the goal of JHipster, of course. Well, if you have any more questions, we've got 1 minute. Oh, can you unlock it, please? So the password is 123. No more questions? OK. Sorry, one more. Can I create my oh yes. Can you create your own templates? Yes, and that's the goal of. So I talked a little bit about here modules and blueprints. So those are two different concepts in JHipster. It would be mostly modules. So you can have your own templates that override what JHipster does, and we did that initially for companies. So it has been used now for like doing Kotlin and Vue.js, but initially we did that for companies. I had many customers who said, "Okay, this is great, but this is not my company logo. This is not my company CSS, and also for example, my security configuration is not JWT. It's my own stuff inside my own bank. So I would like to generate always something on top of JHipster that overrides all this. And so that's what you can do with blueprints and modules. It's like overriding what we do. So if you've got a company, you can have, I don't know, your own. Well, usually what people start with is that they do their own template here. So it's made with Street or Bootstrap, so it's really well, very, very common. So if you give that to any CSS wizard. You can easily change everything to make it look like your company. And well, that was the initial idea, and many people do that. So that's very popular. Of course, people don't want to have our logo everywhere by default. Okay. So we've just finished. Thanks a lot. If you want to chat about GeeCON, I will be right at the conference. If you want to participate in the project, of course, please come to our GitHub project and just participate. More than 500 people did it, so you can probably do it. And if you want to make money, we've got some bug bounties always available, like this one. I don't know for Codebase. We've always got some open. But you can also work for free. It's open source. It's fun. And if you want to chat about GeeCON, so the Twitter handle is Java_hipster. Do I put it? Yes, it's here. So don't hesitate to follow us and ask questions and join the fun with us. Okay, thanks a lot, and well, have a nice conference. Goodbye.